Donald Trump's political advisors and members of his administration have not been forthcoming when it comes to their conflicts of interest and certain ties that they have with Russian diplomats or communications that they've had with Russian figures. And recently there was the discovery of Jared Kushner failing to disclose the fact that he led a foundation that was funding illegal Israeli settlements. Now, this is relevant considering the fact that he is the individual in Trump's administration who has been given a pretty hefty job of providing peace in the Middle East. But this new information indicates that there's a giant conflict of interest that he should have disclosed but failed to do so. So let's go to that and give you some more details. According to a report, Jared Kushner failed to disclose his role as a co-director of the Charles and Seryl Kushner Foundation from 2006 to 2015 on financial records he filed with the Office of Government Ethics earlier this year. Now, keep in mind that during the transition, he attempted to sway a United Nations Security Council vote against an anti-settlement resolution passed just before Donald Trump took office, which condemned the structure of West Bank settlements. So he wanted to delay that vote. And you can understand why when you look into the money that this organization that he was part of and what they donated that money to. So the foundation donated at least $38,000 between 2011 and 2013 to a fundraising group building a Jewish seminary in a West Bank settlement. Okay, so keep that in mind. Also, during that period, Kushner's foundation also donated an additional $20,000 to Jewish and educational institutions in settlements throughout the region. So these are settlements that were built in an illegal fashion, according to the UN. And he didn't disclose this information, and then he proceeded to, urge a delay in that United Nations Security Council vote in regard to illegal settlements. So again, massive conflict of interest. He was not forthcoming, and this is super relevant when you consider the fact that it now, in my opinion, answers the question as to whether or not he accidentally forgets to disclose things or if he's purposely trying to conceal things.
So I think the settlements are deeply immoral. I think that it's not a matter of I think, it's a fact that the United Nations has said that they are illegal under international law. They've been around for decades. The far right-wing government of Israel basically has said, no, we're going to keep the occupation and not given any end date whatsoever. In other words, we will permanently occupy these people. And I can go further in the adjectives related to that, but for here is Jared Kushner saying, oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I'm giving donations to these illegal settlements. And look, I don't begrudge the seminaries or the schools or et cetera. I wish you would give them to schools or seminaries inside Israel instead of in the settlements. I wish that Israel would have a moderate government that would end the occupation. They had one, Yitzhak Rabin, which was going to do a peace deal. He was on the precipice of it, the two-state solution that almost the entire world agrees upon. And then a right-wing terrorist assassinated him and then got his wish. He ruined the peace talks. And Netanyahu, who had been urging people against Rabin at the time, then wound up winning the elections later. And now, as the head of the right-wing government, says no, there is no two-state solution. Israel hasn't moved an inch. They continue to occupy Palestine illegally and immorally. And so now we have Jared Kushner in an incredibly important position. Why? Because he's the son-in-law of Donald Trump. Has no expertise. He's apparently got a conflict of interest. And this is the guy who's supposed to broker a peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians when he's funneling money to illegal settlements.
Well, look, Cenk, what you fail to realize is that these illegal settlements actually lead to more peace in the Middle East.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Palestinians love it. Look, this is crazy. And it's just another example of why these conflicts of interest are something Americans should be concerned about, because it indicates that if they're not passing policy or pushing for things that are going to benefit humans, they're doing things based on their business interests or their political agenda or political motivations. In this case, Jared Kushner was supposed to create some sort of peaceful solution between the Palestinians and Israelis, and that's unlikely to happen when he was the co-director of an organization that was funding some of these illegal settlements or illegal businesses in the West Bank.
So what unites the right wing of Israel and the US, and unfortunately many of the other countries, it's that they believe that conflict is the answer. And so they say, well, we can't disarm because the other side is, oh, they're monsters and they're irredeemable and they will destroy us the minute we have a peace deal. But let's look at history for a second. And Menachem Begin was nobody's liberal. But at the end of the day, he did do a peace deal, which he should get enormous credit for and has throughout history. And so is Anwar Sadat, who was later on the Egyptian side assassinated for doing that peace deal. The peacemakers get assassinated; they get a bullet for their trouble. Okay, but what did that result in? The guy who never gets any credit for that is the one who orchestrated it. That's Jimmy Carter. He's the only president who has ever brought peace to the Middle East. But what happened during that deal between the Egyptians and the Israelis? What the right wing always tells us, oh, that's a fool's errand. Never do peace. No, keep endless conflict. So according to their logic, it shouldn't have worked. And Egypt and Israel should be at each other's throats for the last 40 years, 50 years. But that's not true. It did work. It turns out peace does bring you peace and war brings you more war. Egypt and Israel have not fought for all that time. The peace deal held. Egypt was the largest enemy of Israel. Now we have forgotten it because they've been allies for so long because of Carter's peace deal that you think like, no, really? Yes, Egypt was the #1 enemy of Israel. But we did a peace deal and it worked. But instead, Netanyahu, Kushner, and all the right wing say, no, never give peace a chance because war creates profits. I mean, it somehow magically will lead to peace at an undetermined later time. They don't want the peace. They were going to continue the settlements ad nauseum because they think war and conflict leads to people being scared and voting for right-wing politicians. That's their real agenda. If you like this video, you'll love the whole TYT network. Check it out at tytnetwork.com/join.